Alright, well, I'm doing this because I was in an argument with somebody a while back, and they had said that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z can't really be considered great series on the fact that they don't have very memorable villains. He claimed that they were cookie cutter villains, that they all had the exact same motive. There was absolutely no difference in them whatsoever, except that the next one was stronger than the last one, so on and so forth, etc., etc. Now, to a degree, it was relatively true. However, the early villains in Dragon Ball, first of all, it was an adventure series. It wasn't originally supposed to be anything more than that. In fact, before that, it was just supposed to be a comedy, hence Pilaf. But then after that, it evolved into an adventure series. So you had the World Tournament with characters who weren't necessarily villains, but there you go. You had the Red Ribbon Army. You had Mercenary Tau. You had Commander Red. You had General Blue. You had Officer Black. You had Colonel Silver. You had General White. And sure, they all had relatively the same motivation. Possibly because they were part of the exact same organization. They did have, again, their own fairly unique personalities. But, they did have sort of the same goal. But again, it's part of the same organization for essentially um, several chapters, several episodes. He was fighting the exact same villain, the Red Ribbon Army. Even Tao, even though he only did it for money, was doing it for the Red Ribbon Army, so that they could get the Dragon Balls to which for control the world. That did not change until Goku busted in there and completely, utterly decimated their little private army. Then we moved on to Fortune Teller Baba. Then we encounter Pilaf again. Then we move on to Tien and Chaozu at the tournament. There we ran into an interesting dynamic. We got a little bit more of Roshi's past. We got to see some interesting internal conflict. Tien's kind of a villain and yet kind of a quasi-villain, I guess. Um, and there you got some very different motivation from the last guys, for sure. Has absolutely nothing to do with the Dragon Balls at all, in fact, and it's entirely a revenge story, or attempted one. But then comes King Piccolo. Now, King Piccolo is a character that I think is in fact misunderstood, even by people who know him. I'm not I'm not talking about the people who, think that Piccolo was always a good guy or didn't know that there were two versions of him or anything like that. No, I'm talking about the fact that there are people who know who he is, have seen him before, have seen the show, so on and so forth, yet they don't quite grasp the character or how complex he is or what he represents. So, let's dig a little bit into that. King Piccolo originated as part of Kami, as you know, but how in the world did he come about? Well, as you know, Planet Namek, long ago, encountered a great cataclysm. It was destroying the planet. Their atmosphere was unraveling. There were storms all over the place. Their magnetic field was going, if I recall. The whole planet was just becoming uninhabitable. And in order to save part of their race, they sent at least one child that we know of off-world to go somewhere else until they could bring him back home. However, never really came about. The Namekian race was all but destroyed, save one, who became the Grand Elder that we know, which is also known as Guru. But this little Namekian was on planet Earth. Innocent little thing. Wandered around, taking sights, learning about the planet, seeing it was a beautiful, amazing place. It was something that he did truly love. He loved nature, he loved the people, he loved everything about it. It was just like a second home to him. He took to it very quickly. In fact, it was mostly the only home he ever knew. Then something happened. Piccolo began to try to interact with people, and he began to see how they were. He began to see how they could be prejudiced, how they shunned him as a monster just because of how he looked. He uh, he began to see how people could even treat each other, how they would lie, cheat, steal, kill. He began to see, how self-destructive humanity could be, and how it seemed that they rejected him just based on his appearance, and it caused this darkness to form inside of him and to grow. Now, it stayed mostly under the surface, and for the most part seemed rather benign. It was a bitterness, sure, but that's all it really was. It was a cynicism. It was a darkness. It was just, it affected his outlook on life. But he figured that he should become the kami, the guardian, the god, if you will, the protector of the world, the overseer. And so he goes to the current guardian and he says that he wants to become his student. He wants to take on his role one day. The kami looks him up and down and says no. Because whereas you are very powerful, yes, and you do seem to genuinely want this job, there is a darkness within you that has the potential to grow. It's going to be a temptation to misuse this power, to think that you know better than they do and interfere in their lives far too much. And I can't have that. And so the Namekian sits down and enters a state of deep meditation, trying to purge these evil thoughts from his mind. The problem is, he did it almost too well. He purged all of it, every single bit of it, every single bit of this darkness, this bitterness, this cynicism, to the root. Shoved it right out of his body. The problem is, it was so volatile. It had been so much potential to envelop him that when he did finally push it out, it became his mirror image. Not just his mirror image, either. It became him. It was him. It's part of Taoism. It's the yin and the yang. They're two complete opposites of the exact same thing. The one can't be without the other. And as such, Kami could not, the being we know as Kami could not hurt the being that became known as Piccolo. And by the same token, the being known as Piccolo could not hurt Kami. Could not. This thing did, it knew exactly what it was doing, too. It turned itself not only into him, but an 8-foot tall monster version of him. Giant, imposing, vicious, wicked. Designed itself to inspire fear. And figured, I can't hurt this thing, I can't kill myself, I can't hurt myself. So what's he do? He decides that if he can't hurt Kami directly, he can get to him, he can hurt him by going after what he loved, by remaking it in his image, by doing exactly what Kami was trying to prevent from ever happening. The reason that he purged that in the first place. So he began to attack the earth, began a reign of terror, used his dark power, his perversion of the spells known by the Namekians, perversion of what Kami had learned during his study of, the sacred rites of the past guardians. Everything that he knew pretty much opened up a frigging gate to hell. Unleashed an army of darkness on the entire world, a reign of terror unparalleled before, which Kami was technically powerless to stop. Even if he had gone down there and intervened, he couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop Piccolo, because Piccolo was him. However, thankfully, after a while, one of the humans managed to learn one of these sacred spells and used it to seal away Piccolo at the cost of his own life, where he stayed for 200 years. Now, this is where things get interesting because people have also cited this as a plot hole. When Kami is revealed later, he is revealed to be much stronger than King Piccolo was. But at the same time, he's supposed to be an exact split of the power. So how did he get so much stronger? Well, think about it. King Piccolo has been sealed away, unable to do anything for 200 years. Kami has had 200 years to train, to get stronger, to grow his powers. So of course, when King Piccolo is finally let out, Kami himself is going to be stronger. So it's actually not a plot hole at all when you think. But aside from that, King Piccolo then gets unleashed, tries to gather the 7 Dragon Balls, gets them, gets his wish, gets his youth restored, begins his reign of terror again. Now, this is something that people need to understand too. It wasn't just his motivation to rule. Ruling wasn't enough. Even to be worshipped as a god wasn't enough. His whole plan was to remake the earth into hell on earth, to make the people be swallowed up in darkness, to be swallowed up in their own evil, their own darkest desires, to watch these people begin to turn in on themselves, and you can see it happen. You watch it happen. People start turning on each other. They're in a complete state of total utter terror. The worst in them is coming out. It's it's whether it's out of fear, whether it's out of anger, whether it's just out of a perverse thrill that they're getting from this. Society begins to turn itself inside out, which is Piccolo's greatest victory because he knew Kami was sitting up there watching all this, the very thing that he had longed to stop. And Piccolo was making it happen fast on a grand scale, and reveling in the fact that he was now the god of this world. King Piccolo is actually quite a complex villain and quite dark. You see, what you have to do is pay attention. You have to reflect on what you know about Piccolo. Piccolo's motivation as you see it looks the way it does when you think it's just Piccolo. Once Kami's revealed, however, once the relationship between the two is revealed, and you go back and you look at it, it's pretty freaking dark. It's pretty messed up, man. King Piccolo is actually a pretty dang good villain. I have to admit, he's really good. And he's just the tip of the iceberg. So, next time we move on to the next villain group, the Saiyans. So till then, see ya.